Well, I'm honored today to be here. Really an honor. When Pastor Karen called me Sunday, I was surprised, shocked. I couldn't hardly believe it, but it's true. I met Gary when I was 16 years old. I moved from Point Township to Lynn Township. That's a long way. It was kind of like going to Indianapolis for me. Hadn't hardly been out of Point Township. Working on the farm for 2 years out there at room and board, and got to know Gary and his dad. I had some former relations with family, Baldwins. There were some in Point Township, and the Floyds. In fact, I live on the farm that used to be the Floyd farm. My farm is on there. Gary would have liked the fact that last year I stopped farming, trying to farm, and planted 3,500 trees on my farm. But I met Gary at two places that I thought was the best place in the world when I went to Lynn Township. Some of you may not remember, but Dawson's General Store. When it would rain and the weather would be bad, the farmers would go down there and talk. The boys, kids, we got stuck in another room. You know, get around the adults. You know, let's man talk. And we got to know one another through that. I love that store. We had a store in Point Township similar to that called Buchanan's General Store. You had a huckster wagon and you went around every Friday and delivered things. I could tell you some stories about that. My brother and I. The other place that we congregated when it rained and bad or equipment tore up was Creekmore's Oliver Dealer. What a place. I wasn't an Oliver man. In fact, there was only one farmer in Point Township that had Olivers. But my future father-in-law that I worked for 2 years, he had those Olivers. And it got to be a pretty nice piece of equipment. We worked together. We had that in common, and I'm thankful and privileged. Gary, Reverend Turner said Gary was a member of this church, and I teach my people. I'm still pastor 51 years. I've been going, and I'm still going. I'm going to go till they carry me out. And I tell them, you don't go to church. You don't become a member of the church. You're not part of the church. You are the church. And I saw a sign as I come through Mount Vernon this morning. The Methodist Church on the west side of town has some interesting signs. And I'm in the process of losing my memory. If you get 80 years old, you'll understand what I'm talking about, probably. But that sign, my doctor said you need to memorize all you can. And I looked at him and I said, duh. Losing my memory, and you want me to memorize more stuff? But the sign this morning coming this way said a good example is twice as good as good advice. Is that good or what? And Gary, if he wasn't anything else, and he was a lot, he was an example. He was an example. He exemplified his Lord, his church relation, his community. As we would say, there used to be pillars. In my former church in Point Township that we pastored 35 years, I saw people who were pillars in the church. Most of those people are gone home to heaven or in nursing homes. And we're not replacing those pillars very fast. It doesn't seem like there's taking root and growing into the church. And we missed those. They weren't maybe outstanding, but you knew what they were doing. They were praying for you. They had your best interest in mind. I'm thankful for the time that I knew Gary. He never seemed to change. And that's one of the highest compliments I think a person could have. I was an electrician for 40 years, and a man came to me one time, and I crawled out from underneath the house, and I had dirt and cobwebs and spider bites and everything on me. And as I crawled out, he said, you know, whether you got a suit on or not a suit, he said, you're always the same. I thought maybe that was the best compliment I ever had. And Gary was that way. Wherever you found him, that was the way it was. A little, maybe advice, and I'll close that. I could talk all day. Plan your life as if you're going to live forever. And live your life as if this is the last day. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. First, I would like to say thank you all for coming today to honor my grandpa's life. I know everyone here sure meant a lot to him. I don't need to tell you how great of a man my grandpa was. I believe his toughness, his kindness, his life lessons, and the love he showed towards others speaks for themselves. But I would like to share with you some of my favorite memories and explain the huge role he played in my life. At a very young age, he taught me the meaning of the word chivalry. I started going up to Michigan with Immanuel when I was in the 6th grade. Although I had been many times before that, this was my first time by myself. I remember going into a restaurant, most likely McDonald's with Gary Baldwin, and attempting to walk in before Mamaw. He caught me with a stiff clothesline to the chest and said, Mamaw always goes first. I learned that day that you always hold the door open for a lady, especially your wife. When I turned 18, he took me to register to vote. I don't quite remember where we went to register, but I remember telling the clerk all my particulars, name, date of birth, address, etc. Finally, she asked if I would be registering as a Democrat or Republican. Before I could answer, Papaw said Democrat. The day I turned 21 was a big day, as it is for everyone. That morning, Papaw called and said he wanted to take me out to lunch. He picked me up just before 11 a.m. and took me to his favorite lunch spot, Goody Hughes. There we met Don Bestie, Dave Kissinger, and Ed Russell. It was there he bought me my first beer as an adult. I can't think of a better way to spend my 21st birthday than with my hero and some of the best men I've ever known. I truly felt like a man that day. When I was a kid, I got to go along with he and Dave Kissinger on countless excursions in the upper Michigan woods. I would think we were lost every time, but somehow they would always get us back. I took in a lot of wisdom and knowledge on those drives, including some new words I wasn't allowed to repeat. Papa was there when I graduated Army boot camp and military police school. He was there when I graduated the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, and he was there on the most important day of my life, the day I got married. He knew the first time I met Erin, I was supposed to marry her. He'd often say, "You got a good one, Isaac." He was absolutely right. He gave me my love for the Green Bay Packers. I was so blessed to get to go to several games with him in Green Bay. I even got to skip school my senior year in high school to go to a game with him. Thanks to him, we have our cabin in the UP, which in my opinion is the greatest place on earth. He taught me how to fish, to hunt, and to navigate the woods. He would always share with me lessons his dad taught him. He taught me how to shoot a gun. So well, in fact, I qualified as an expert in Army basic training and the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. He could fix anything, and he seemed to know the answers to everything. I was always amazed at the depth of his knowledge. But most of all, he taught me that God and family are the most important thing in life. He loved our family so much and was so proud of each and every one of us. Nothing made him happier than all of us gathered together on Packer Party Sundays or holidays like Christmas morning. Since I was old enough to drive, I would go to his home earlier that morning when no one else had gotten there on Christmas morning. We would always drink coffee and watch our favorite Christmas movie, A Christmas Story. No matter how many times we watched it, he would laugh just as hard every time Ralphie said, "Oh fudge." I will very much miss that this year. He made me who I am today, and I am forever thankful. I will end with what I thought was a very important scripture verse in this difficult time. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. In this difficult time, I am thankful that I had my grandpa for 33 amazing and priceless years. And until the day I am reunited with him in heaven, I will lead my life in the example he set, along with the great coach, Vince Lombardi, God, family, and the Green Bay Packers. And that over. Love you. Thank you.
A man's got to do what a man's got to do. Famous words from John Wayne, Gary Baldwin's favorite movie star and cowboy. The wonderful thing about this quote is that it's completely up to the individual to interpret what those words mean to them. Papa loved that quote because of the way he lived his life. It's not hard to figure out what it meant to him personally. So what does a man have to do? What does he believe in so much that it drives him to action? Well, Gary Lee Baldwin was a man who believed in, as Isaac just said, the words of Vince Lombardi. Faith, family, of course, the Green Bay Packers. Faith to Papa meant loving his fellow man. It meant that when a neighbor came to ask for a helping hand, he said yes, gloves already on and ready to work. It meant that when others were too proud to ask for help, he did what he could to make sure that at the end of the day, they had enough to make it through to the next one. He championed the Lord through his passion for others, always willing to forgive and go the extra mile to give them another chance or opportunity. Faith meant being honest, hardworking, and listening to that inner voice telling you right from wrong. That's why he could look in the mirror at the end of the day, every day, and be proud of the man he was. Family meant just as much to Gary Lee. Born in the tough times, in an era that didn't give children many opportunities to explore their interests because there was work to do and few hands to do it, he did everything he could to make sure his children and grandchildren were able to take full advantage of all the opportunities presented to them. He changed careers at 40, worked extra hours countless nights, and spent a plethora of personal time working on our homes, cars, and anything else we needed to make sure we had what was necessary to live safely and comfortably. I've often felt the Green Bay Packers was added to that Lombardi quote as a separate third piece. But now in retrospect, I see it as just as much a part of faith and family for the Baldwins as anything else. Growing up, the schedule on Sundays in the fall was always the same. Go to church, rush home to change clothes, grab the food Mom made last night, and hurry out to Mama and Papa's to watch the Packers play and eat a potluck lunch with the family. Halftime usually involved the great storyteller himself taking us on walks and telling us about the trees and plants we passed. I love watching the Packers play and cheering them on. What I love more is the memories I've made with my family while doing such. My grandma can be heard from miles away when the Packers score. My Uncle Brett has half a dozen catchphrases born from big plays. And I can remember hundreds of games just by the memories we made at halftime. And that's what the Packers meant to Papa. Going to church, coming home, and have a wonderful time with family. That's what they mean to all of us. I won't take too much more of your time. I'll keep this short and sweet, just like Papa. But I do want to say one more thing. Gary Baldwin always strived to improve not only his lot in life, but of others as well. He never said no to a friend in need, and was always willing to be the teacher we needed to guide us to a better path. May we carry on his mission in our own lives, and do what we can to leave this world a better place than we found it, while adding a little joy to everyone's day, as he did, through his storytelling prowess and vivacious spirit. A husband, father, grandfather, brother, friend, and mentor. May he rest in peace.
Love is a risky thing. Our hearts will get broken on this earth. And our family has a broken heart right now because a huge piece of our family is missing. And we will never be the same. We've lost a husband and a dad, Papa, and an uncle and a cousin and a friend. But God has been so kind to us. We've all been together for almost 2 weeks, and we've felt his hand upon us in every single detail. He is reminding us of his promises and his blessing as we share these precious moments together, about the impact that my dad had on our lives. This year I was able to spend Father's Day with my dad for the first time in many years, because usually Mom and Dad are at the cabin in June. As I searched for a present for him this year, nothing really stood out. And I finally decided it was time to share my thanks with him for giving me so much in my life. So I wrote him a letter, and I wanted to share it with you today. My top 10 memories. Dad, I thanked you many times before for the gift of the cabin. The bonding time and memories there are so precious to us all, and it will remain my top memory. You have given us truly a glimpse of paradise. But there are many more that I want to share with you. Thank you for a carefree childhood, country living at its finest, running around barefoot and playing in the barn. Our barn was the biggest adventure ever for a kid. There was never any stress about you and Mom's relationship, ever. We were so secure. What a gift to give children. We never knew a lack of money or anything. You provided everything we needed. Number 2, playing in the fields where you farmed. I could smell the freshly disked dirt, and I can feel the warmth of that soil on my bare feet to this day. If I push deeper with my toes, the coldness too. And playing in the woods at Sam's place, the fresh spring water hidden in the woods like a treasure. Coming home from school and running to the fence to see Baby, our orphan lamb we bottle fed and raised. I get to tell this story to Garrison now, my grandson. And I cry almost every time I tell him, but Dad had every kind of animal on the farm for us to learn from. Number 4, you let us explore and do everything, Dad, which is why we Baldwins think we know everything. I feel like I've always known how to drive, mow, and use any kind of tool. My dad was the original homeschooler, as he taught us a little bit about everything. Number 5, the sweet smell of the birthing barn during lambing season. This taught us the miracle of birth, life, and death, and I was always fascinated by it. Little did I know I would go on to be a maternity nurse as a career. Number 6, the gift of my first new car. You gave me the best, Dad, and I was so proud of it. My brothers may never let me live that one down. Number 7, all of our Canada trips. The car rides were so much fun. You taught us how to read maps, and I felt safe going anywhere with one. I still have a paper map when we travel, and I study it as we travel. It's just a piece of him that he's always given me. Does a 2-day car trip sound fun with 3 kids? My dad made it amazing. A word about up north. My dad was so drawn to that because it was untouched, and there were few people. Of course, we were kids before cell phones, but it's still, when you unplug up there, you truly unplug. And I know without a doubt that he has walked with us in those woods where few people have ever stepped foot. They're truly pristine. Number 8, here's a hard one, Dad. I've never thanked you. I never thanked you for whipping me with your belt when I got mixed up with the wrong kids in high school. That turned my life around forever. And I never smoked or drank again in high school or college. I never wanted to shame you ever again. And that brought me to Tony. He was my gift because I knew he was a church boy who would never do any of that. Now I understand that discipline is love. Number 9. The gift of siblings to share life with and make memories together. When I wrote that, I had no idea I'd be sharing these last days with my brothers. And if it can be said, I will treasure those days all of my life when we were around my dad and he's dying. What a gift. So now we can share those memories and grief. Love each other a little deeper. And number 10, took us to church to meet God, Dad, but it was up to us to find him in our hearts. You've raised good kids to be good parents. And your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren are your gifts and your legacy. I could go on and write many more, Dad, but I couldn't find a fitting gift for Father's Day this year, so I decided it was high time I shared these thoughts with you. Oh man, am I glad I did. When we are young, our bodies are strong, but our minds are immature. When we are older, our bodies are weak, but our minds are mature in wisdom and thanksgiving. I love you, Dad, and I'm proud to be your daughter. Thank you for gifting me with life, love, security, and knowledge. I know God's hand is upon our family. Jesus has brought us much joy, and we can rejoice each and every day. All my love, Lean. Yes, love is risky, but it's totally worth it. He is worth our grief. God knows our pain, and his love is the only victory over death. For God so loved this world that he gave his only Son. Whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. John 3:16. We believe in God's promise because they are trustworthy and true, and we will be together again someday in paradise forever. Thank you. He has one more friend, John Pierce, that one
Missouri. We'd get up around 4 o'clock in the morning and head down that way, stop at a little restaurant in El Dorado, Illinois, and have breakfast. And then we continue on to Sykeston. We usually went about 3 or 4 times a year. And we go through the farm machinery junkyard. Sometimes we'd buy something, and sometimes we just had a good time and enjoyed each other's company. Sometimes we ate at Lambert's, and sometimes we'd stop at the car cracker store in Missouri and buy some car crackers or fireworks. And although I was not involved in the story, I'm going to tell you a story about Bill and Gary, because it was a pretty funny story. They decided they was going to make some whole hog sausage. So they go to Bill's and they get this hog and they take their time and do it all right, you know, and kill the hog. And they started putting the salt in the sausage, but they put too much salt. So back to Bill's house they go, they grab another hog, throw it in the truck, shoot it. It didn't take them near as long to skin that hog, but they made some sausage. And over the years, we kind of didn't see each other as much. Gary started working at GE and had the cabin in Michigan. They spent time, and Bill and I still square danced, camped, and farmed together, or farmed with each other around the company. And then, about a year ago, Gary came to eat breakfast with a breakfast club that we have in Mount Vernon called the Thursday Morning Breakfast Group, that was started several years ago by Cecil Waters, a big Democrat, Bob Farrell, the hard-headed Republican in Mount Vernon, and this intermediate person that had to keep them from killing each other. But you let one person say anything about either one of them, and they have to fight them both. As time went on, we came up to where we had about 10 people in the club. And then Gary said, John, I want to join your club, your breakfast club. And he became an asset from the very beginning. Gary became one of our cooks. He started out, we putting the biscuits in the oven and frying potatoes. And we already have we have an annual benefit dinner each year for the Posey County Council on Aging that we raise money for emergency funds. And I got ready this year, because Gary's only been with us for a little over a year. And I was so glad to get him back into my life because it's been so long. And he was the first to purchase tickets that year for M&A. And he said, I want to go. I said, Gary, I don't even have the tickets printed yet. He said, that's all right. And then Gary went back to Michigan this year. He said, John, I'll be gone for the summer. And when he returned, Gary had some health problems along with some other people. And he had some surgery and a blood clot. But he still came to cook and enjoy himself. On Thursday, July the 9th, Gary came and he cooked the sausage for our sausage gravy, fried the potatoes, and we both were sitting around, and all of a sudden, Gary started reminiscing about some old times, about going to Sykeston, and only that him, Bill, and Raymond, my brother, had been the first class to graduate out of the new high school. And about after getting out of school, joining Battery B, the 163rd Division of the International Guard. I'd gotten out one year before they came out of the Guard. And then all of a sudden he said, John, do you remember the time that we went to Mattoon, Illinois? And he said, you bought a truck and I bought a plow. And we loaded on your truck and hauled it home. I said, Gary, I've forgotten it, but since you bought a WS, I did it. I said, Gary, I'm going to be 82 years old on the 27th of July. And he said, well, I'm going to be 77 on the 31st. And now I'm going to tell you the hardest part of Gary and me. We were sitting there, and just out of notion, Gary said, John, I don't think I'll live to be as old as you are. And I said, Gary, you're going to live to be 100 years old. But that wasn't to be. I believe in God, and I believe God had a plan for all of us, and he had a plan for Gary. And Gary has completed that plan on earth. He completed his mission. And now he joined 4 other members of our breakfast club in heaven. He's up there with Brian Herman, Cecil Waters, Jimmy Reeves, and Don Harrington, which he passed away. I was at his funeral yesterday. Cecil's last words to me before he passed away to us, he said, "I'll see you in the morning." And I look forward to seeing Gary and Cecil and Brian and Don in heaven one day. I know they're somewhere fixing breakfast right now, preparing a place for us to come. May God bless each and every one of your family, friends of Gary today. And I thank you very much for this time to spend this minute. And Ann, he loved you very much. He thought a lot about you. He always had that smile on his face when he came in for breakfast. And I can naturally say there was no better friend than some of the friends I have here. I have been blessed so heavily with about 28 guys now that have come to join our breakfast group. And we enjoy each other's company. We like to circle for our circle of love before we have our breakfast, but since the COVID-19, that has stopped that. Now we have to sit 6 feet apart, wear face masks, face covers when we cook, but we still. And we had breakfast this morning, and Al, Mason, about 5 or 6 of my members are with us today. We had our national prayer for Gary this morning. And God bless you. Thank you for letting me speak.